right, welcome to episode 2 of the Remy podcast. I am here this week sans Lord Matthew, but with Mets fan extraordinaire, Ruben Negaglione. Ruben, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for the embellished welcome.
You're very welcome. If I don't overhype it, no one will. In a sad string of events, did want to open up giving condolences to the Steinbrenner family. Joan Steinbrenner, George's wife, passed away today at age 83. Big blow to the Yankee community. The Steinbrenners obviously quite the legacy, and she was a huge part of the team. So just kind of a momentary condolences for that. But jumping in this week, the winter meetings were held and ended yesterday. They wrapped up. The major sort of point of contention during the winter meetings was all these potential three-ways. You know, there are quite a lot of opportunities for three-ways in Vegas. But the major ones mentioned were between the Mets, Marlins, and a couple different teams, all regarding the Mets acquisition potentially of catcher JT Realmuto. With the Yankees, it would have Andujar going to the Marlins and getting Noah Syndergaard from the Mets. And currently, a lot of people are reporting that the Mets are trying to rope in the San Diego Padres. The Marlins allegedly like a lot of their prospects. And also Noah Syndergaard going to the Padres. Ruben, as a Mets fan, with Noah Syndergaard as important to that rotation as he is, there's so many different catchers. You know, there's Maldonado, there's Wilson Ramos, there's Yasmani Grandal. There's so many different catchers who have offensive capabilities that could help that lineup. Why would you sacrifice Noah Syndergaard just to get Realmuto?
So my take on this might not necessarily be everybody else's, but I feel like Syndergaard has not hit his ultimate peak yet, and I think the Mets are dangling Syndergaard to create value or see how much value is out there. But I think at his absolute peak, he's maybe a top 5, 10-ish pitcher in all of Major League Baseball. So I would ask you at Realmuto's absolute peak, not as a catcher, but as a hitter in Major League Baseball, where does he rank?
I can't put him. I mean, he's number one, hands down, the overall complete package. He's the best catcher in the league.
Sure.
But could I tell you he's a top 10 or even top 15 hitter in the league? No. I mean, he's a 290-plus hitter. He's good for 20, 25 bombs.
Yeah. But how often has he done that? So if I were the Mets, I think I would basically be on the verge of an aneurysm if I was considering that deal.
I think the thing that's most interesting really is, you know, right now just the fact that the Mets and Yankees are even having dialogue. You know, before your new GM, you know, Brody's talking to Cashman. So, I mean, that in itself is somewhat historical because of, as you and I know very well, the rivalry that exists. You would never have a major trade occurring.
Sure, and I think that reflects very well on Brody, to tell you the truth. So I'm not a typical Mets fan in the sense that I was born and raised in New York City. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and became a Mets fan there. So I don't have the angst, or I don't feel like the second citizen, the little brother of the Yankees per se. But for me, if it were an individual business and I'm running my business, what's best for business? And if the Yankees have something to offer that makes sense for the Mets and vice versa for the Yankees, it has to be considered. That's how people talk these days. This is the day of the internet. Information changes hands within seconds. And if you can find an advantage working with your typically arch rival, why not?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you got to do what's best for the team and for growth, and you can't be so myopic. One of the three ways that did actually go down in Vegas was a three-way trade between the Cleveland Indians, Seattle Mariners, and Tampa Bay Rays. The Indians acquired first baseman outfielder Jake Bauers, first baseman outfielder Carlos Santana, $6 million from the Mariners, and the Mariners got first baseman DH Edwin Encarnacion, a round B compensatory pick, $5 million from the Rays, and the Rays got third base prospect Yandy Diaz, a right-handed pitcher Cole Sulser, and those prospects were both from the Indians. Diaz is sort of the big prospect. coming from Cleveland. He had he hit 312 in 120 plate appearances in 2018 with sort of a minor look at the major league level. Honestly, most of the scouts that I was reading say that he's kind of like a fringe talent. But, the Rays in past years have made their bread and butter off using fringe talent to fill out the roster.
Sure.
I get this in terms of money savings and cost savings. Encarnacion and Santana were costly pieces to both of those organizations. Santana's beloved in Cleveland. Beloved might be too strong, but certainly a very high-profile athlete from them. He still has his home in Cleveland. He never wanted to leave. He took the Phillies offer just because they backed up a Brinks truck of money at him, and he never wanted to leave Cleveland, so he's happy. And I'm sure Encarnacion is going to be a cup of coffee in Seattle. They're going to look to dump any major salaries humanly possible. What are your thoughts on this trade? I mean, it feels like the Rays just I get their level prospects, but I feel like they got the shortest end of the stick.
Well, first of all, aren't there extenuating circumstances under which Seattle's general manager made this trade? I think you were telling me a story yesterday, and I think for clarity, we should understand the full depth of this.
Jerry Dipoto, who I think is mostly known for wheeling and dealing every single day, had a blood clot in his lungs. He was in a hospital in Vegas as a precautionary measure during this trade. And apparently, rumor has it, was fist bumping with nurses as the trade was being completed. I literally don't think this man could survive without making a weekly trade of some kind. I think that's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I think to put, again, a New York prospect, a New York outlook on this, is now you kind of have Yonder Alonso, who is sort of superfluous as a first base piece that now can be traded. I know the Yankees had some interest in him previously, and the Indians had turned him down. But now you got the same type of guy in Carlos Santana, and I wouldn't say little known fact, but Yonder is the brother-in-law of Manny Machado.
Is he really?
Yes. They are very close. You may not always like your brother-in-law, but
sure.
There's a need. He's a left-handed power hitter who gets on base. Not necessarily a high-average guy, but he plays a competent first base.
Sure.
Is that attractive? Hey, your brother-in-law's on the team, and we already hear rumblings. We will get more into Manny in a moment.
Well, let me double back on your question about Tampa Bay because I threw you off track.
Oh yeah,
there.
Sorry about that.
I believe that a lot of teams are trying to follow the Houston mold, which is acquire as many prospects as possible. I mean, how many years ago was it that Houston lost 100-plus games in consecutive seasons, I think it was? But even back then, Sports Illustrated was picking them 5 years down the stretch, to win a World Series. And I think they accurately predicted the World Series MVP from a couple of years ago. Who am I thinking of here? Who won for the Astros?
Are you Carlos Correa?
No, not Correa. They won the World Series MVP, center fielder. I'm drawing a blank right now. But nevertheless, people are trying to follow the model of acquiring as many prospects as possible. So you can understand that from the perspective of a small market team with limited resources. So the jury's out. The jury's out more definitively in baseball than it is in any other sport, I believe.
I would say so. And it's amazing what they've been able to do. But the Rays are kind of like a kooky little. They're not. I understand what you're saying with trying to replicate that sort of level of success, but they're kind of like a kooky team that just. They have a little bit less financial flexibility that Houston does. They don't have the kind of support that Houston does. Tampa needs to move that stadium. They need to be in a different area.
Tampa's a New York market. I mean, it's filled with the Red Sox fans and Yankees fans anytime they go there. So
that's with the exception
Northeast
of,
market, I should say.
That's with the exception of Toronto. I mean, that's how Baltimore is too, sadly.
Yeah.
But they don't have the turnout. They try and get innovative with the budget they have. This is a nice segue into our pitching discussions, but they didn't have the financial might to have a full rotation last year, so they had to come up with the opener strategy and have kind of a start by committee. But they did make headway in the pitching market. They signed Charlie Morton during the winter meetings, which was good, so he's off the board. The Yankees picked up Jay Happ again. He's 36 years old, but they gave him a 32-year deal worth $34 million with an option For another.
Hopefully not for 32 years, though.
No. Did I say 32 years?
You did say 32-year, $34 million deal.
2 years and $34 million. He will not be pitching into his 70s.
Hey, but if he got a 32-year deal at $34 million, it's quite a bargain in terms of overall compensation.
Yes, this is not a Bobby Bonilla deal, though, to rope that in. But, yeah, he has an option for a third year if he it's a vested option if he does 165 innings or 27 starts in 2020. I got that from Andy Martino from SNY TV. And then also Lance Lynn was picked up by the Texas Rangers for 3 years, $30 million. So a lot of the pitching landscape has kind of cleared. I mean, there's still Dallas Keuchel available, although a lot of teams seem, for whatever reason, leery of him.
Yeah.
And then none of the big trade pieces. We assumed that Cleveland would trade Kluber or trade Bauer. I ran a poll on Twitter wherein I wanted Yankees fans to tell me, should we acquire Kluber, Bauer? I put Marcus Stroman on there. I put Bumgarner on there. I didn't know at the time to put Noah Syndergaard on there, so I apologize. Sure. 49% of Yankees fans that took part in the poll wanted Kluber, 24% Bauer, 18% Stroman, and 9% Bumgarner. I mean,
what was the percentage on Kluber?
49%.
49%.
We actually had a pretty for this we had a pretty healthy number of people actually.
How old is Kluber now?
Kluber, I believe, is 31.
Okay, and a two-time Cy Young Award winner already. So.
Yeah. I mean, he's a bona fide ace, but I've heard some rumblings and things. The Mets are interested in him because of Mickey Callaway's connection. The Dodgers are interested in him, and obviously the Yankees. But apparently the Indians are asking for an arm and a leg. I think with the Dodgers, I've heard rumblings that they wanted Cody Bellinger involved in a deal for Kluber. And I know that, the Mets trying to get him too. You're trying to build with this future that you have. At what point he is an ace. I would love the Yankees to get him, but at what point do you mortgage the future for Kluber, especially like if you're the Mets?
Well, you have to define what the future is. What is the future? What could entice Cleveland? I mean, are you talking about trading prospects that you don't really have anymore since you gave them up in the Cano-Diaz trade, or are you talking about a corner outfielder, youngish, in Michael Conforto, or somebody along those lines, and it's I don't think that would be enough. So I can't believe the Mets are a serious player in this instance. I think the rotation's good enough already, but I couldn't imagine that would be enough to get Corey Kluber away from the Indians.
And I don't think it is either. I mean, I know we kind of have some inkling of an idea. It was mentioned that the Indians really want like Andujar and Estevan Florial, who the Yankees highly covet, and he's currently their number one prospect.
Where does he rank in the Baseball 100 prospect list? Do you have any idea?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll be honest with you. But I mean, he's a highly sought after 5-tool player.
But Andujar is a one-season proven commodity.
Yes.
With Flores, is that what you said his name was?
Florial. Estevan Florial.
So prospects, you just don't know. They're a crapshoot.
It's true, and that's my thinking now is if you're in a position to win now, and Florial I mentioned last week is 2, 3, maybe even 4 years from being your everyday outfielder. Yeah. He's a center fielder.
If he develops.
If he develops, yes. And you have Aaron Hicks there for the next couple of years, who's a phenomenal defensive and an under the radar offensive center fielder. You got to take. If I'm the Yankees, you take that. You take that risk to win. Do
you give up Andujar?
Do you give up Andujar? Yeah. I love Miguel Andujar, but to your point, he's you didn't mention the defense, but he's a defensive liability. On offense, like you said, he's 1 year proven.
1 year.
1 year proven. I honestly thought he should have been Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
I know the sort of spectacle of having Shohei Ohtani on both sides of the ball.
Sure.
But to consistently hit, and Andujar carried the Yankees for stretches when Judge went down.
Sure.
I mean, he was the lifeblood of the offense.
Yeah. So you would give up Andujar. I mean, I agree because you can't be in the American League East with winning 100 games last year, being 1 game away from the World Series 2 years ago, and having your own division and hated rival as the current world champions. Like you're in an era where you have the opportunity over the next 3 years to potentially get 1 or 2. Or at least you're in position to compete every year for a world championship. So you have to augment that. Would you now the question you need to ask if you're a Yankees fan or if you're in Yankees management is getting rid of Andujar and a prospect, but more so Andujar, is that creating a hole where none exist already? What are your options to back that up at the expense of getting Kluber?
It's true, and I don't necessarily know that Kluber, that Andujar is exactly the missing piece of that. I know for the Mets options, when they wanted to send Andujar maybe to the Marlins so they could get Syndergaard, so I was lumping him in sort of that whole thing in terms of players that they could give up. I don't know offhand that the Indians specifically ever wanted Andujar. I know they wanted Florial.
Yeah.
But those are the types of players that they wanted to give up. But if you do get a Manny Machado, you slot him to third. Didi will come back and play short.
Yep.
You have Gleyber Torres, who's phenomenal as well and was in the Rookie of the Year running at second. And then you can also get somebody to stabilize the infield. You get like a Daniel Murphy because the Yankees are so right-handed heavy.
Yeah.
You need to split that up. You don't need a superstar till Didi comes back later on in the year. You just need a stabilizing force.
And what's his? How long is the recovery for Didi?
He's going to be out probably till June, July.
Okay, so you're
maybe
missing
August.
2-3 months of the season.
Yeah. So I like flexible pieces, but we're talking about the starting pitching market, and then something else out of the winter meetings that's starting to kind of come into shape too is the relief market, because the relief market is a big issue right now with the teams. The Mets just got Familia back.
A familiar face.
A familiar face. What a wonderful birthday gift to you. Craig Kimbrell's still out there. He wants to command crazy money. Zach Britton, who left the Yankees, is going to be getting closer money. David Robertson from the Yankees is potentially in the mix to be a closer. And then you have your Andrew Millers and your Adam Ottavinos.
Yeah.
That's the next thing to kind of keep your eye on. The Mets just acquired Edwin Diaz from Seattle, so you got that back end piece that really.
They have two right-handed people at the end of the games. They have an eighth inning guy in Familia, who's proven in the New York, to an extent, he's proven in the New York market. And you have Diaz, who, if you were taking a poll, he might be the number one ranked reliever in baseball right now. He's 23 years old. Basically, if he throws a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, you ask what happened. His slider is devastating. But the relievers, man, I tell you, they're a crapshoot. And I don't mean a crapshoot in that, 1 year they might be great and the next year they might be great, but they fade very quickly. Britton in Baltimore, I mean, what did he have? The greatest reliever season just a couple of years ago. And what is he now?
No, well, he succumbed to injury. He was a shell of his former self. He came back to form, as a 7th, 8th inning guy for the Yankees. But the way the game is right now, where you're trying to shorten it as much as possible and get to these power bullpens because, the Cubs did it, the Royals did it, the Yankees are doing it. That seems to be the formula these days. So, you're trying to stockpile arms, and there's only so many proven people. But, to your point, it's such a volatile market.
It is.
Some of these players are going to price themselves out. I don't know what team. I do believe Britain's going to get, closer money. But how long are you going to commit to somebody like that? Kimbrell wants 6 years. Who is going to give Craig Kimbrell? And Craig Kimbrell, has a proven track record as a closer for what he did in Atlanta, for what he did in Boston. But who's giving him a huge long contract?
Yeah, it's tough. It's you can't be afraid to fail at the expense of succeeding, but you have to be smart in the process. So the Mets just offered Jerry's Familia 3 years, $30 million, $10 million a year. Seems like a reasonable contract because they're not even asking him to be the closer anymore. He's been in the New York market. They know he can handle it to an extent. Now, does he have somewhat of a volatile history with the Mets? Of course he does. He blew three saves in the World Series, although 2 of them were definitely not his fault. But the question still remains, are you getting what you expected and set out to get? Is your bar so high that people can never meet that expectation? And at what expense are you investing in things that can be volatile at the degree of perhaps getting something else, filling a need somewhere else?
That's true. It's speaking of potential volatile needs that maybe assets could go elsewhere. I wanted to touch on, and I'll start with Bryce Harper. I talked about him last week a little bit too. There could be a potential fit on the Mets. Some people have mentioned the Yankees. The thing with the Yankees was kind of interesting because at the start of the winter meetings, Brian Cashman was asked, do you have interest on Bryce Harper? And he said, I don't know why people keep asking me about Bryce Harper. I have 6 outfielders, which he has Giancarlo Stanton, who's a DH. They're worried about his legs. His hamstring is not particularly in great shape.
Sure.
They're leery of putting him in the outfield. Judge is your right fielder. Hicks is your center fielder. Mm-hmm. And then Brett Gardner was re-signed to be your fourth outfielder. Clint Frazier is a medical unknown because of his concussions. And Jacoby Ellsbury, I think, is going to be, if somebody gives us a bag of popcorn for him and could take most of his money, I think we're good on that. So to say that there's not space in the Yankee outfield for Bryce Harper is to me insane. And then Cashman said he didn't see the first base option's been floated, by Boris that he could play first base. That's not happening
for Bryce Harper.
Yeah. Yeah, and Cashman didn't want unknown quantity. Yeah. But the other day on the 12th, I have this quote I got reported from Brian Hoke, who Cashman said in verbatim this: "If something doesn't make sense today, it doesn't mean it won't make sense tomorrow. All I can keep telling you is, where my current focuses are, but at the same time, we're a fully operational Death Star."
Oh yeah, that sounds like Brian Cashman to me. He's playing up the degree of the evil empire, eh?
Yeah, that's the nickname. He's owning it. He was talking about the flexibility and the ability that they have to shift, and it's not the first time where they've shifted. In 2009, Nick Swisher was supposed to be our starting first baseman. He got Mark Teixeira.
Sure.
Before Johnny Damon got signed, Bubba Crosby was going to be in our outfield. Yeah. Even more recently, we have a crowded outfield. He went out and got Jacoby Ellsbury. I regret that implicitly. But the thing is, he has a history of saying, we don't need this guy, and then he goes and gets this guy.
Well, what's the best way to make yourself... Let's take a dating scenario. Unless you're the best-looking guy in the world, you're Matthew McConaughey, and you walk in, nobody's really turning cheeks left and right. So if you're an average guy or a decent guy, not the best-looking guy in the world, but you walk into the bar and you're a good person, and it's the old adage: if you don't pay attention to somebody, they kind of want to know what you're about. So is Brian Cashman throwing that nugget out there to see if he can get agents to reach out to him? Is he trying to get Bryce Harper to say, no, let's talk to the Yankees. Let's create something there. And would that surprise you?
No, and it's a bit assumptive, but, I mean, Bryce Harper, when he was in high school, admitted to being a huge Yankee fan. He wears 34 because 3 + 4 is 7. Mickey Mantle, his icon, his all-time favorite player.
So he watched him when he was young, then.
Yeah, clearly he had that TARDIS technology. He went through the time. Did the time travel, but no, they're gonna know. And Scott Boras is not an idiot. Keeping the Yankees in the conversation also keeps the dollars high.
You have to.
But on the flip side of that, if the Mets are trying to prove themselves to be the new pinnacle, the new focus in New York, which Brodie Van Wagenen seems to want to do. Do you make that splashy move if you're the Mets to get Bryce Harper? There is a fit there.
You don't make moves just to say that we've arrived or that we're not going to be the small market team anymore. You make moves if they make sense. Now, Bryce Harper is going to command a lot of years and a lot of money. How many superstar seasons has Bryce Harper had? I'm not saying he's not capable, but how many does he have currently? One, and it's an all-time season. It's an all-time season. But since 2015... he's middling. I mean, I think...
He hit, 248
240? I mean, he was struggling almost at the Mendoza line last year for a good while. And funny enough, the All-Star game, actually, the Home Run Derby actually helped his power outage in the second half of the season. The fear is, what's it going to do to his swing? I was like, well, I thought they've been swinging all year. They should be... We're talking about 3 ways in Vegas and swinging. We should go there.
And then on the other side of the coin, on the other superstar watch, Manny Machado next week is going to go on tour with 6 teams. 3 of them are the Phillies, the White Sox, and the Yankees.
Yep.
Brian Cashman has admitted to being interested in Manny. The Phillies want to throw stupid money, but they did just acquire Jean Segura from the Mariners. So he can't play second, but he plays first.
The Phillies made another acquisition that kind of was a head scratcher. I can't remember who it was.
Was it McCutchen when they signed McCutchen?
Oh, they signed Andrew McCutchen.
They signed Andrew
3
McCutchen.
years?
Yes, 3 years.
Oh, I think the Phillies are going backwards.
I don't know what they're doing. And then there's 3 mystery teams that we don't know. Chicago's a big market. Philadelphia's a big market with something to prove, and then If Manny Machado wants to go to the Yankees and the Yankees want to give him money, it's happening.
It's happening.
But the question is, do they want to give him what he wants? Because I heard they won't go over 8 years. They don't want to give him a 10-year deal.
What's his age right now? 26, 27?
He's 26.
26? I mean, that's a reasonable... even 10 years. 10 years is never a great idea, but at least he's 26 years old.
Right. They're not going to give him 10 years.
Well, let me flip this. Let's take away the GM hat. You're a fan.
Right.
Manny Machado has said, I don't get paid to run out like infield grounders.
He's not Johnny Hustle.
He's not Johnny Hustle. What do you feel about that?
I touched on this last week a little bit.
Okay.
The Yankees reached out to like Buck Showalter and former teammates, and they all Buck Showalter
can't play shortstop though.
And
he's old.
That's true.
Yeah,
but
I would give him a contract.
Buck said of Manny's personality, the amount of times that he has those sort of moments is minimal.
Okay.
Yeah, you talk to him, he feels
in a
bad.
vacuum.
Yes. He comes to work every day. He trains like crazy, and he is a once-in-a-generational talent. He really is. He is one of the best defensive third basemen. He's not predominantly great at short, and his offensive production is always high.
Yeah.
He's also, I looked at the numbers directly between him and Harper. He also is amazing with runners in scoring position, which is something that the Yankees fail miserably at.
Yeah.
So the good and what he's capable of doing outweighs the negative. It really honestly does.
So you're okay with this?
Well, I'm okay with the Yankees' strategy, which is when he's on tour and meeting with everybody and this and that, Hal Steinbrenner wants to sit down with him and talk to him about those comments that he made. You can't sweep the comments under the rug. He put it out there. He was spiking people in the playoffs. He wasn't running out ground balls. And that's not going to fly in New York. Regardless of which borough, it's not going to fly in New York.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing with Robbie Cano, and I know Yankees fans hated the guy because it never looked like he was hustling to first. But, one of the things that's said about and I'm not specifically saying Manny or Robbie, I'm just talking about these types of talents, where the game comes very easy to them.
Yeah.
The things that they're able to do defensively with the ball, with anything, looks very easy.
Yeah.
Their minimal effort sometimes is better than other people's max effort.
Sure.
So you have to look at that. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or otherwise. You're going to give somebody stupid money, but you have to look at that.
Yeah, of course you have to consider it. I mean, again, you're in an era where your arch rival is the world champion. You almost made it to the World Series 2 straight years, and there's no reason to think that you can't be in the hunt for the next 5 years with the existing roster as the basis of moving forward. I mean, obviously, you can't just maintain for 5 years.
No, you got to build, and I agree with you. And I just want to, talking about what you're building on and what we're doing in these type of players, kind of segueing into the last topic of the night. One of the biggest surprises of the winter meetings was the Blue Jays cutting Troy Tulowitzki, who still has like $38 million left on his year, $38 million left on his deal. So a team that signs him has to give him league minimum, which is $500,000, $500,000. Were you surprised that happened? And then, Tulo has said, he's 34, 35 years old, and he doesn't want to stop playing shortstop. He's not willing to not be a shortstop unless something different has come out. I don't want to put words in a man's mouth.
Yeah.
But the indication is he wants to be a shortstop and is a shortstop. How do you feel about cutting him, with a pedigreed player like he is, and then also that type of mentality at his age?
Well, we don't know the behind the scenes, but I'm pretty sure Toronto reached out, and you mentioned a bag of popcorn earlier for Ellsbury. I'm sure they were looking for something similar, and at the point where they realized that there was no interest, it's a business world, and it's tough. He was a great player. He's not that anymore. So if he's a positive clubhouse influence, I don't want him on my team. I would never guarantee any at bats, but I mean, utility infielder is one of the most important positions you can have in baseball these days.
It is, but if he doesn't want to be utility, what do you do?
Then you say sorry, buddy. I mean, it's up to you. Is the expense of not playing baseball worse than being a utility infielder?
No, it's
That's
not.
What you'd have to ask yourself.
And I was trying to think of fits. I saw on Twitter John Heyman put out that he thought that the Oakland A's could be a fit. He's a Northern California kid. I saw somebody mention Clint Hurdle.
Well, he's in the price range for the A's.
He's absolutely right. Clint Hurdle's on the Pirates. Obviously, Clint knows Troy very well. They could definitely use him there. I don't know how many more seasons they can trot out Jody Mercer at short.
Yeah.
I personally thought the Orioles could use him as a stopgap to have some kind of veteran leadership on that team.
Well, let me just say something real quickly, though.
Yeah.
It depends on what his attitude is. So let me use a basketball illustration.
Sure.
If a guy who was a superstar or an extremely good player is no longer what they were but thinks they still are what they were, a.k.a. Carmelo Anthony, you're a team wrecker. It'll never work. So it depends on what is that, not the exit interview, but the intro interview. I don't even know what you call it, the vetting process. What are your expectations for yourself? How do you want to contribute to a team environment? How will you mentor our young players? Are you willing to play more than shortstop? Are you willing to come off the bench? Lefty relievers, be a specialist, whatever it might be. Those questions, you cannot just throw away experience. And you can't, to a degree, you can throw away previous accomplishments, but you can't discredit it in a clutch situation.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think if he is willing to be a positive veteran influence, like you mentioned, and if he's willing to be sort of a super utility guy, maybe go to one of those situations where they could use him for short,
Sure.
and give him. He's not going to get over 600 plate appearances, but
I'm a Mets fan. The guy I'm going to mention is going to shock you, but the guy who's done it better than maybe anybody in recent memory is Chase Utley. He was an all-star perennial MVP guy.
Yeah.
And he's never been anything great in the last few years, but he'll give you quality at bats. He'll grind, and everybody wants him. He's the guy. He's the Dennis Rodman of back in the day. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's on the other team, you can't wait to rip his head off.
No, I agree with you. I always kind of went on the ladder on Utley, but yeah, he was a great gamer.
Well, because he was never on your team.
Right.
So of course he went down the ladder.
And I'm 90% sure, during the 2009 World Series that I was scared that some of the Yankees would trip on the base paths over the, oils dripping from his hair. But that's a whole nother story. So that wraps up our second baseball episode at the Remy Podcast. Next week, hopefully, we'll have a little bit more trades, a little bit more movement now that the winter meetings have wrapped up. Definitely would love you guys to like and follow kind of what we're doing on Facebook. You can like our page on Facebook.com /TR Podcast. Ruben, thank you very much for stepping in and filling Matt Gabriel's oversized shoes.
Yeah.
I caught him off guard.
Well, there's many ways I could take that comment, but I will reserve most of them to myself.
I appreciate that. But yeah.
But if we talk about three ways next week, it won't be about the winter meeting.
I don't know. Yeah, there'll be. I don't know how many more three-ways we're gonna have out there, but hopefully.
Wait, could we have a three-way podcast?
We can absolutely have a three-way podcast.
Well, let's make this happen. I got real excited.
I mean, we're basically inside of a small closet here where we're recording, but
and my puppy dog's outside, people.
And his puppy dog's outside. We are big fans of. We are big dog fans, the both of us. Yep. Kodo is a very, very cute, cuddly boxer.
Yes.
Is that an accurate
handsome.
Handsome.
Stoic.
He's a stoic boxer. I will have Robin. Wow. I will have Robin.
Is that a Marvel character?
I am Batman and Robin. I will have Ruben put pictures of Kodo on the Remy Podcast's Facebook page. Is that a good ask? Is that something we can do?
Oh, absolutely.
So you guys can see what a good boy Kodo was for waiting up on us. But until next week, I'm Remy. This is Ruben. Robin. A little bit of R&R for you. Guys, have a great week, and join us next week. We'll, like I said, have some new topics, hopefully have some new signing information, and always be a fan. Thank you.
It's a trap!